Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video on the top champions to climb out of low elo with. My name is LowFit. I do educational content like this. I also do guides and tip videos. And yeah, so I also stream every day at 6:30 if you guys didn't know that. And Pacific Standard Time, of course. And I am asked this question so commonly, whether it be video comments or on my stream. Probably answer this question in some respect, whether it be a certain role, probably once or twice a day. So I decided to put this video together so I can just point you guys to kind of like a catch-all for any role that you are looking at. These are all going to be relatively easy to execute champions that have decent carry potential. And yeah, I know people get very protective of their favorite champions. So I wanted to start this video out with a disclaimer. If it's not on the list, there's a reason for it. I'm not interested in comments that are like, but my Maokai or my Anivia is so good, everyone should play it, and everyone will climb so quickly. This is personal preference and my personal experience with climbing. I've done a couple accounts from bronze to diamond, and I think I have a relatively good understanding of what is required to climb at all these different levels, and I think that these are the main champions I think people should focus on. So, getting that out of the way, let's just jump right into top lane. So, I'm going to go over these champions very quickly. If you want a more detailed response to why I think a particular champion is viable, I guess you can make a comment down below, but I'm just going to do a really brief overview really quickly of everyone. First up, Garen, extremely easy to execute kit, strong split pushing, strong dueling potential, a lot of damage, a lot of tankiness, and the easiest to execute champion in the game. If you're terrible mechanically, he's going to have the same trait every single time. You don't have to hit some sort of massive skill shot, so I'll click and I'll just get on top of him and spin. So that wraps up Garen. Next up, we got Trundle. He's a great tank. He works great in the tank meta. He's going to steal away a lot of stats. He's going to be a good split pusher. He's going to be a good team fighter. He's a really simple kit, and he has a great amount of sustain with his passive, giving him health off of every dead minion around him. Next up, Mundo, very strong tank. A lot of sustain, a great frontline, not the best engage, so if you need engage, Mundo's probably not the best for you. If you just need a big frontline solo tank, Mundo is going to be a great pick. Also really good against AP heavy teams because he gets base magic resist off of one of his passives. I believe his W or his E, I can't exactly remember right now, don't crucify me on that. Next we have Malphite. If you need a team fighting top laner, he's super easy to execute, decent laning phase, can run away pretty easily with his Q movement speed, and has a huge engagement tool and is relatively low econ with what he needs to do. He just needs a few items to be effective. He just needs an item or two. Just a little bit of tankiness, and Malphite's going to be a great pick. Next up we have Urgot. He is highlighted because I think he is one of the best in the line of carry potential. I love him. I think he's a great pick. He is very strong in both split pushing and in team fighting. He has a lot of carry potential. He is so strong at level 3 and 6, and also on all these lines I ordered them on the easiest to execute champion if you struggle a bit with mechanics, to a little bit harder to execute, but they all are relatively easy to execute champions. This is just the order that I put them in. So Garen would be the easiest to execute champion, and then Urgot would probably be the hardest in that row, and that is applied to all the different roles or all the different rows. And next up we have Jungle. Warwick is great to just start learning paths. You have great sustain, you're going to stay healthy in the jungle. He has a really easy to execute kit. He has a lot of base tankiness with his E and sustain from his Q, and his ult is going to be a really great engagement tool if your team needs engage. Next up, Trundle, the only person that I added twice in these rows. He is a very strong duelist in the early levels. He has a great ganking tool in his pillar, and he steals stats with his Q, and his R is great against a bunch of tanks. And if you need a really strong frontliner, he is your man. Next up, Pantheon. If you enjoy the ganking style, he is very strong with his stuns. He's very good with his early and mid game potential, and his ganks are just monsters at level 6, being able to get behind enemies with that global ult. So if you'd like a strong ganking jungler that has an easy to execute kit, Pantheon is your man. Next up we have Xin. He relatively is a high sustained jungler with his passive giving him health, and he is a great ganking jungler with his E gap closer, his slow from his W, and his knockup from his Q, so he brings a lot of CC to the table. super execute. He's like a missile. You just throw him in the direction of what you need killed, and easy to execute champion, so that is why he's on this list. Next up, we have Amumu. He's a great team fighting jungler. The only caveat I put with him is that he really struggles against junglers like Lee Sin and Graves that can bully him out of the early game. So take it, do not be blind picking Amumu, because you can get counter jungle quite hard by a bunch of people because he's so weak early. Next up, we have Zac. He is a great team fighter and great ganker. So if you really enjoy the ganky playstyle but also want a tanky champion, Zac is going to be great. I can't say it enough, because his mid lane ganks, he can come from so many different angles. He has really a bunch of unique ganking paths that he is so strong and has a great carry potential to get your teammates ahead. Next up, we got the mid lane row. Probably one of the easiest lanes to carry with, because you're in the middle of everything. You're able to roam up to top, mid, or you can invade the jungle or protect your jungle pretty easily because you're in the middle of the map and you can roam first. We have our Lord and Savior Annie. She is the easiest to execute champion in the game because she is the simplicity of the kit of Garen, but she is also ranged, so she's a bit safer. If you struggle with CS, she has a great tool with her Q of getting a mana and cooldown refund after killing a minion with it. Next up, we have Karma. If you prefer a more of a stay back, you don't want to die too much, you struggle a lot sometimes with dying, Karma can be a great pickup to enhance carries. You probably shouldn't pick her in a 3-tank comp where you only have an ADC to back you up for the secondary damage source, because she does not provide too much damage in the late game, so make sure you have at least one other carry outside of maybe the top or the jungle. Next up, we have Ziggs. If you are struggling with CSing, he's great at CSing with his really strong AoE wave clear, and he can also prolong games quite a bit when they have when they're quick games that you're getting sieged down really quickly. Ziggs is great in sieging and anti-sieging situations, so he amplifies your ability to snowball games, and he also takes away the ability of the enemy team to snowball on you. He is really strong because he's another easy to execute kit. You just need to be decent at skill shots, and he has high impact at pretty much every stage in the game. Not the best early game, but he has a decent early and great mid and great late game. Now, next up, Galio. He's a great champion to take into roaming champions. He's really tanky and has a decent amount of mobility with his E, so if you die a lot, he's a great pick in the mid lane. Again, and he's great against countering roaming jungler or roaming mid laners like Talon, like a Rolling Soul, like Talia, that look to take advantage of your low level bot lane or getting a numbers advantage in top lane. So Galio is a great pick into that, and can be a great pick for a frontliner if you don't have any tanks out of the mid or jungle, which we see so commonly in solo queue with everyone just trying to carry. Next up, we have Ahri. If you have to play an assassin, if you love the assassin playstyle, she is probably the first one you want to pick up, because she has a very low skill floor. That's not to say that she doesn't have a high skill ceiling. I'm just saying that she is one of the easiest to access, easy just entrance level of an assassin. If you just have to play a melee assassin, if you just love that kind of playstyle, I'd recommend Echo. He's probably going to be a little bit easier than things like Yasuo and Zed, and he has a relatively easy to accomplish combo. Just sometimes might struggle a little bit with the ult snapbacks and the W stuns being predictive. And the last person up in this row, my favorite champion that I love to encourage people to play in the mid lane. I know it's a little bit out there and some people might consider him hard to play, but I think he's relatively a great champion for climbing, because he has a failsafe in his passive. He's always able to get a guaranteed amount of damage off, where other champions in this row might be getting bursted before they can get their combo off. Karthus is an amazing pick for this if you die a lot, because you're still going to get a shitload of damage off and you're going to guarantee your ult, and if your team needs AoE damage, he's a great pick for enabling that type of play style. He is great with CSing with his isolated damage from his Q, and can give you a good amount of bullying at all points in the game with your high Q base damage. Next up, we have the ADC role. I think this role is pretty cut and dry outside of maybe Varus. The first three are super easy to execute champions that have a high amount of reliability. We have Misfortune first, because I think she's the easiest to execute, because she's ability based and you don't have to be super concerned about getting off as many autos as possible. If you play things like mid or support where you're used to throwing out abilities, Misfortune might be a great way to play when you're auto filled into the ADC row, and all you need to do is get off a good ult and you've done your job as Misfortune. Next up, we have Tristana, one of the safest ADCs if you are struggling against assassins killing you all the time, or fed members that your allied team is feeding. She's great because she can jump away with her W and then also knock away people with her ult, so she's one of the safest ADCs in my opinion. Next up, we have Sivir. She is just a wave clearing monster with her AoE damage. If you are having CS averages like 4, 5, or 6 a minute, you might want to look into her because she's really going to enable you to quickly destroy waves with your Q and W combined. Next up, this Varus is not the on-hit Varus. I do not recommend on-hit Varus for new players because he is not the safest champion. This is lethality Varus. This is only played when there aren't that many divers and there are squishies on the enemy team. He's really good against a bunch of control mages like Azereth, Talia, Ezreal are on the enemy team, and those are their 3 carries, and the other 2 are just tanks that are trying to frontline. Varus is great as just shooting past the front line and getting at those control mages from a safe position. On hit Varus is going to be a little bit more difficult to execute, so I don't recommend him to new players or low elo players. Varus is just a super easy, just hit your Qs in team fights on squishy targets, and you've done your job, similar to Miss Fortune's ult. Next up, we have the support role. This is also going from easiest to execute to the hardest to execute. And Sona, and it kind of goes from your agency in the game and being able to carry goes from Sona to Brand. Brand's going to be the highest carry potential, and Sona's going to be maybe a little bit lower in the carry potential. It just matters on your playstyle, but in my opinion, Brand can carry a lot harder than things like Sona. And without Sona, I think Riot adds certain champions like Annie, Sona, and Garen that are at a good level of strength and are super easy to execute because it provides a champion to new players to play with their friends and actually interact in those games without just absolutely being useless. She has no skill shots outside of her ult, so she has a great base amount of effectiveness that she can pull off in team fights. Just really don't want to play her into a bunch of divers and assassins, and she will do great in front-to-back team fights that are probably going to become more prevalent as the tank meta comes a little bit more into the main stage. Next up, we have Janna, pretty much the opposite. She is an anti-assassin type of support, giving shields to stop the burst and giving the knockback from the ult and the W from the slow and the Q with another knockup. So her entire kit is built around stopping assassins and divers. So if you see a lot of those, Janna is a great safe pick and relatively easy to execute. Next up, Soraka is really good in those front-to-back team fights where she can consistently heal up damage being done and just make sure your front line doesn't die before their front line does. So she's also great with her silence, being a really unique ability that only a few people have, that is really such a strong and underrated ability of preventing people from either flashing or using high impact spells. So she is also a great pick. She's not going to be able to carry as hard as something else, but if you are getting autofilled, she can be a great pickup. Next, Morgana. She is highlighted because of her ability to emphasize the strengths of assassins and divers that are played a lot in solo queue with her black shield that really negates a lot of the CC that is being thrown on them. Also, she has a great amount of pick potential with her Q and a decent amount of W damage with her W and R, and then a little bit more CC with her R. So Morgana is a great mix between an enchanter and an AP mage. She's kind of like how Urgot is a mix between a split pusher and a team fighter. She is kind of in that happy medium of being able to carry and then also just being relying, if you're not playing that well, and just being an enchanter in the back line, just trying to help out your team. Next up, we have Zyra, the first big damage AP mage that I think has a really great amount of carry potential. She's really good against a bunch of squishies, decent against tanks if you build correctly, and she can provide a lot of consistent damage with her plants and a lot of bursts with her spells. Yeah, just great carry potential. I think that if you put some time into her, she's definitely worth it. You just have to get used to your E timings on your route because it is a relatively slow skill shot. And next up, we have Brand. He is kind of a different. If you're an AP mage support player, you want to take Zyra into squishy team comps and Brand into really tanky team comps because you get percentage health damage with your Brand passive, and you're able to do a lot in team fights where people are clumping up with a bunch of tanks and just trying to run you over like a steamroller. Brand is a great counter for that, and that will wrap up my favorite champions for climbing out of low elo. If you want a more kind of a longer explanation on why the champions are there, please let me know. I actually recorded a video of this that ended up being like 30 minutes or something, so I tried to make this one quicker because I think that video was way too long. So I cut out a lot of just me talking about these champions. If you want a more detailed explanation, I'm going to put my Discord and Twitter in the description, or you can hit me up on one of my streams or just in the comments of this video if you want more of an explanation, or if you just have some questions or want to just have a chat or talk about your OPGG or what you can do about climbing. I'm super open to all that. My channel is educational at heart. I'm just trying to help you guys climb. So that will wrap up the video. If you enjoyed the content, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, guys, take it easy.